What is up, all you beautiful, wonderful YouTube people? Eric here with Team Badman, and I don't know about you guys, but it is really cold around here right now.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can see that. It says 17 degrees. It feels like 7. We've got like 2 inches of snow out there, and there's just ice everywhere. And the heat doesn't seem to be coming into the living room of my apartment, so it is really, really cold in here right now.
But that is not going to stop me from delivering to you guys our latest edition of BadBuilds, which is where we here at Team Badman break down the decks that we have been using so that you can both get an idea of what we have been playing here and hopefully get some ideas for yourself for some decks to try out, or maybe ideas for the same deck that you may have been running yourself but aren't completely satisfied with the end results. Oh, for fuck's sake, come on, guys. God, it's like I'm living in Gary again. You done? Come on, you done? Yep, great, thanks. Since the release of our last single-person BadBuilds video, which was the Saiyan Empowered Goku build, which I will go ahead and put up in the corner over here somewhere, we have had quite a number of matches that have been released on the channel, and a lot of them have been very, very well received. And especially the matches that we have had with the Saiyan Empowered Trunks deck that we have been using here. This one is most known for being used by James, who has really been enjoying the deck and has actually piloted it very well. So if you haven't seen the matches already, I'm going to go ahead and put the links to all of them right down here at the bottom of the screen so you guys can check those out whenever you so choose. But we have gotten a lot of questions here at Team Badman about the build of the deck and how the deck runs and what makes the deck tick. So I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and break that down for you. While James is most known for playing the deck, it is my original build and is one that I really enjoyed putting together. It's gone over very well at our local. Everyone enjoys playing it, and everyone kind of dislikes playing against it, since they haven't really seemed to have found a reliable answer to it. It's gone over very well. It's got some really nice synergy to it, and it's just a lot of fun to play. So I'm going to go ahead and break down the Saiyan Empowered Trunks build here at Team Badman that we have been using, and I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. Actually, let me get a drink of coffee first. There we go. Alright, so Saiyan Empowered Trunks, this deck uses entirely the new Evolution stack, which works out really well with the style. It does a pretty considerable amount of damage. Level 1's not super strong with AT plus 1, but if your opponent blocks, they have to skip their next action, which is nice for a little bit of continuous disruption. Level 2 deals a flat 8-stage attack if you haven't played an attack from your hand already. So it's a nice lead-off, and it usually forces an opponent to block, which can open them up to stronger physical attacks somewhere down the line. Level 3 is where it starts getting absolutely bananas. You can discard a card from your hand to choose an attack in your discard pile, put it in your hand, and your opponent skips their next action automatically. So exactly as has been described, it's basically visiting the past on steroids, and it can really mess with an opponent, as I'll explain a little bit later on. And level 4 keeps pressure really high with a +5 stage buff, currently the highest in the game. And you combine this with all the powerful attacks that Saiyan style already has, and you can deal huge amounts of damage with a single attack. It's probably second only to Villain Vegeta level 3 with its +3 life, +3 stage buff, which is just ridiculously powerful. But Trunks is a phenomenal stack, especially compared to the old stack, which was really kind of lackluster in comparison, especially for Saiyan style. But this one is absolutely great, and it fits really well with the theme of the deck. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with the setups in this deck. There are a number of great setups that Saiyan style has access to, which really either leverage the game in your favor or away from your opponent directly, in which there is a difference, and I'll go on ahead and hit that in a little bit. I run here, my primary setup is 3 Saiyan Enraged, which is an absolutely excellent setup in Saiyan Empowered. 2 anger outright, you rejuvenate the bottom 2 cards of your discard pile, which most of the time will end up netting you 4 anger outright. Plus, if your power level is higher than your opponent, you get to draw a card. This is a great leveling tool to have. It's really easy to use, especially after you may have thrown just an off attack or passed a combat and rejuvenated to give yourself a little bit of anger. So it's really nice to have to help jump levels. James has used it really, really well, being able to pop off multiple into combat, which can really, really mess with opponents. It's an absolutely excellent setup, and it's one of the most potent to have on the board, which makes it really dangerous for an opponent to not have an answer to it right away. Next, I run 2 Saiyan Peace in here, which is one of my favorite Saiyan-style cards from Evolution. You can set your anger to 0 whenever an opponent levels, and it forces them back down, which this is where I was saying that you can put your opponent at a disadvantage outright, since this is a really nice answer to have for both speed anger type decks, such as Namekian, Red, or even some black decks, being able to really hamper their primary win condition and slow them down a bit. Plus, it affects decks like blue and orange style, which primarily have only certain mechanics in order to level. Blue with dominance and black or orange with cards like Devouring Drill. So it's really easy to slow down their primary tactic, especially if it's a card like Dominance when they're entering combat. So you can really put them at a bit of a disadvantage. It's a nice setup to have. Unfortunately, it's a really, really common target for a lot of board hate, so I don't get to use it as much as I want. But when I do use it, it can really mess up an opponent's strategy, and that's really nice to have. I run 2 Visiting the Past in here, which is pretty self-explanatory. Being able to pull any card out of the discard pile is really nice to have, especially if you're on an offensive bent. This works in combination with Trunks' level 3 power extremely well, since you can pull out an attack from the discard pile, throw it, and then pitch a card that you don't want in your hand to get one out of your discard pile later on. So it's excellent to have. It's always a danger for an opponent to see on the board, and it's just extremely effective. And the last one I have is 1 Tree of Might. This is effective in this deck for a number of reasons. The +2 damage buff is very useful to have available, and the ability to pull out a freestyle drill when entering combat from the life deck is really nice to have, especially considering that I run only 1 drill in the deck, and of course it is a freestyle. And that drill is Combination Drill. Combination Drill is a great choice to have, since when entering combat you get to destroy an opponent's drill, and then they likewise can do the same. But they can't target Combination Drill, so it means you're getting to destroy a free drill every time that you enter combat, and your opponent's a little bit stuck. This is especially useful since Saiyan doesn't have a whole lot of board answers that are readily available outside of cards like Saiyan Intimidation or Saiyan Sabotage. So having that readily available at any point is really useful. The caveats are that it's 1 per deck, and it's kind of hard to get out of the discard pile once it's in there from leveling or maybe losing it off the board. It can always be rejuvenated at some point, or if you're lucky enough to get it later on in the game when you can pull it out and not have to worry about losing it from leveling. It's great to have readily available. But it's a nice answer, and it can slow down opponents who are relying on drills, especially orange and blue decks, which can put them at a pretty heady disadvantage. It opens them up to some of the stronger attacks that you may have available, which is just really nice. So I can't complain about having it in the deck. It's a great choice for Saiyan. If you haven't tried it already, I definitely recommend it. Next, I'm going to go ahead and hit on the events. Saiyan's got some really solid events, the least of these being Saiyan Outrage. I run a full package of 3 Saiyan Outrage in here. It's an Omni block, which is great to have. But its primary utility is that if your power level is higher, you get to search out an attached card from your life deck and place it into play attached. This is useful with the Tree of Might that I mentioned earlier, since it applies with that. It makes it just that much easier to get Combination Drill out into play, as well as deal extra damage. But it also combines well with my other styled event in here, which is Saiyan Rescue. Saiyan Rescue is great because it's selectable rejuvenation that you can get So you can get back some of those more reliable cards that you want to pull out. It's great for Times of Warriors tool, great for some of your milled out freestyle cards that I'll get to later on. Plus you can get that combination drill back if you want to, then pull it out with Tree of Might, or you can gain Anger for rejuvenating Saiyan style cards. So, it's great to have. It's always useful, even if it's not quite as useful as in other decks that may run cards like Saiyan Menace, which you can immediately place into play for rejuvenation. But nonetheless, it is rejuvenation, which is a great thing to have. So I certainly can't complain. It's a useful attached card, and you see it in just about every Saiyan style deck. And lastly, I run one Times of Warriors tool, which is once again a self-explanatory card. Stops attacks, stops all attacks for the remainder of combat. Even if it's not quite as potent anymore as it used to be, with access to cards that don't get stopped by floating effects such as Saiyan Dash or Vegeta's Destruction Blast, or cards like Orange Freezing Drill that shut them off outright. It's still an excellent card to have nonetheless. I argue it's the one true staple for Dragon Ball Z decks, and it finds a place in just about any deck no matter what, so of course it has to be in here. So next, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the bulk of the deck, as you can see right here, and that is all physical combat cards. Now that is kind of expected given that Saiyan is known for the big brutal physical attack cards, but a lot of these are in here for their secondary utility, and Saiyan's got some excellent utility cards, a lot of great stage deprivation choices, or easy ways to put an opponent at an unfortunate disadvantage, and yeah. So arguably one of the key physical cards in this deck, and one of the most frustrating for just about anyone I played with it to face, is Saiyan Sword Strike. I run a full set of Saiyan Sword Strikes in here, and it's an absolutely phenomenal physical from Evolution. Attack table +4 is strong, but the key here is if your opponent has passed in their last action, the attack both can't be stopped and the damage can't be prevented, which makes it absolutely dangerous for more passive kind of decks. Defensive blue decks definitely suffer from this. Namekian decks that may not have a lot of actions can really get stuck by this. And on its own, it's just a solid physical attack. So it is always a valuable one to see in hand. It's one of the most commonly targeted for card hate, such as Confrontation or Stare Down, or banishing it out of the discard pile with a card like Devastating Blow. So it's probably one of the most hated single cards in this entire deck by my local, but it's also one of the most dangerous for them to encounter because it will completely screw them over. I've hit with consecutive ones to mill out half of an opponent's deck with just this card alone, making it both really powerful and almost disgustingly dangerous. So it's a great choice. A full 3 of is completely worth it in here, and if you're not already using it, I totally recommend it. Next is 3 Saiyan Acute Rapid Slam, which at this point is basically a staple physical attack for Saiyan. Attack table +5 is powerful. Being able to put all of your non-banished attacks on the bottom of the life deck is great. Actually, for me, this is one of the most commonly targeted cards for banishing effects, such as Black Scout Maneuver or Android 20's Domination, which to me I'm perfectly okay with because there's so many excellent offensive cards in the deck that I'm actually not tremendously worried about losing Saiyan Acute Rapid Slam. While it is the strongest physical attack in the deck at attack table +5, it's not a major loss to lose it because an opponent could target a considerably more dangerous card that I can use against their build. But whether I have it or whether I don't have it, it's really nice because it's going to give me advantage against an opponent either way. Next is Saiyan Spin Kick, which is one of the best tech cards that Saiyan has to offer. Raise your anger 1, lower your opponent's anger 1, destroy an ally on the board, which is really nice to have considering that Saiyan doesn't have a huge amount of anti-ally tech. Sure, there are cards like Saiyan Intimidation, Saiyan Destructive Blast, Saiyan Surprise, cards like that. But most of the time, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a whole lot of allies the decks are going to run unless they're dedicated ally decks such as Goku or Captain Ginyu. In most cases, it's more useful against decks that run just a couple of allies at a time, such as Android 17 decks or Android 20 decks. So it's nice to be able to pick those off and not worry about them absorbing stage damage. Attack table +3 is solid. Endurance 2 is great to have. It's definitely the best tech card that Saiyan has to offer, at least in my mind. So it's a great choice. Automatically warrants the 3 of on my book. Next is one of my absolute favorite cards to have in this deck, and that is Saiyan Upward Kick. I run 3 Saiyan Upward Kick. It's another attack table +4 attack, great choice. Plus, it shuts off the opponent's ability to gain stages during combat. Now, this is extremely useful against decks that reliably have ways to gain stages back. This is most useful against Black, which has access to cards like Black Foreshadowing, Black Dismissal, Black Power Up, or the new Black Perceptive Mastery, since it shuts off the ability to use those. And it can really screw over opponents who may want to kind of get an out using cards like Black Power Up, since it's still going to put them at a stage disadvantage if this hits. It's also useful against styles like Orange, which reliably have blocks to gain stages back, such as Orange Energy Absorption, Orange Quick Dodge. So this kind of slows them down in that regard, and it leaves them open to taking a considerable amount of damage if you hit with a number of attacks. It's caught a lot of opponents off guard, and it works really well with all the stage deprivation blocks that are in the deck, which I will get to later. Next is 3 Saiyan Gut Kick, which is arguably the most synergistic attack in this entire deck. It's attack table +4 once again, and it forces an opponent to skip their next action during combat, which is one thing that Trunks does very, very well with his new stack, is force opponents to skip actions. It's absolutely nasty to use in combination with Trunks' level 3, since you can throw Gut Kick, force them to skip an action, use Trunks' level 3 ability to get Gut Kick back, and force them to skip another action, then throw Gut Kick again, force them to skip a third action, which is absolutely ridiculous. Can force an opponent into an uncomfortable situation, and it can cause easy hand drain, especially if they're trying to block all of your attacks. So it's really useful in that regard. It's one of my favorite cards to draw and play, so it's an immediate 3 of for the deck. It's an excellent choice. Next is 3 Saiyan Left Kick. Left Kick, I mean, who are we kidding? This is Saiyan's version of Black Lunge. Endurance 1, Raise Your Anger 1, attack table +4 life cards, which is the thing that I like most about it, is that it's an attack that deals 4 life card damage while still being a physical attack. So it can deal a pretty considerable amount of damage, especially on the higher levels. It works very, very well with Trunks' level 4, since you can hit for both life card damage and stage damage, hitting an opponent on both fronts. Plus, with the extra Raise Your Anger 1 level, it's immediate 2 anger with Mastery. So it's great as a leveling mechanism. It's really useful, especially if you're ready to push over the edge. And you can just nudge it over with this attack, so that way you're at full power and dealing as much damage with it as you possibly can. Next is 3 Saiyan Smack, which is actually a really enjoyable card to have in this deck, and one I've been having a lot of fun with. And it definitely fits into that stage deprivation mold. Its physical attack forces all of your opponent's allies in play to lose 2 stages outright when it's played. And if it hits, all of your opponent's personalities in play lose 4 stages. So it really fits in with the stage deprivation. If you catch an opponent off guard and they don't have a whole lot of stages, they're at 0. It forces an immediate mill of 4, even more if they've got a bunch of allies on the board, and you can knock a lot of their stages off. So this can deal a really, really considerable amount of mill damage to an opponent's life deck very easily. The only downside to me is that it's not a super strong attack per se. Attack table +1 is decent at best. It matches with Trunks' level 1, so it's not, it's not going to do a huge amount of damage, but that's not really what you're in it for. You're in it to fit with the stage deprivation, which is absolutely great to have with this. It's a card I definitely enjoy, and if you haven't tried it, I definitely recommend it, especially if you're running into a lot of ally-based decks in your local or in any competitions that you face, because this can really screw them over. Next, I run 3 Trunks' Sword Slash, which I argue is one of the better named cards in the game. Another attack table +4, so there are a lot of these in here. And you can banish 6 cards out of a player's discard pile, which is really easy to mess with an opponent's primary strategy this way. If you are facing a style deck like Orange and you want to get rid of their drills, it's very easy to do with this. You can get rid of named cards this way. You can get rid of staple cards like Times of Warrior's Tool or Spheres. You can just get rid of a big old bulk of cards in your opponent's discard pile. It's effectively 1/10 of their life deck that they're losing to the banish zone, which is really, really powerful to have, especially against certain opponents. And the hit effect just tops it off even better, where your next styled energy attack can't be stopped. This is useful with some of the other energy combat cards I have in here, which I will hit after this. Being able to guarantee a free energy attack that gets popped off is absolutely excellent to have. The only caveat to me is that it's banish after use, which kind of sucks for such a good named card. Less so is that it costs 1 stage, but in most cases you're not really going to worry about losing the 1 stage. Trunks will usually have enough stages to pay for that, and he's not often going to drop a bracket from paying the stages, so he'll be able to do full damage output. All in all, it's a great attack, and if you're not already running it in the Trunks deck, you really should be running it. It's an awesome choice. My last physical attack in here is 2 Saiyan Lifting Kick, which I'll be honest, this is a meta call card. It lowers an opponent's anger 2 levels. If it hits, their non-style attacks deal 2 less stages and 2 less life cards of damage. It's Endurance 3, which is really nice. But it really is only recommended if you run into a lot of freestyle attacks in your local. It's easy if you're running into a lot of Krillin decks, or you're running into Android 20 or Android 18 decks like that. So it's really easy to kind of mitigate off a lot of that damage. But it's other than that a decent card. Attack table life card damage is all right. Even at the maximum possible damage of 6, that's just okay. Plus it's banished after use, which really kind of sucks for it, especially being an Endurance 3 card. Most of the time I've been using this for Endurance, and if I had them more readily available, I would probably swap these out for I'll Dig Your Grave, which is a great synergy power card for this deck. The flat stage damage is great. Shutting off an opponent's Endurance is always phenomenal. Plus, you don't need to worry about losing MPPV if you choose to level with it, since you're not going to MPPV with the Mastery anyway. So it's a great card to have. If you have them, I'd probably recommend running it over Lifting Kick. But if not, and you're facing a whole lot of freestyle attack pressure, this one's probably worth considering. It's done fairly well for me, but I may change it out in the future. Who knows? And that's it for my attacks. So next is my physical blocks. I run all of the stage deprivation blocks in this deck, and they have been doing extremely well for me. I run 3 Saiyan Lightning Dodge in here, which reduce an opponent's stages by 4 to a minimum of 0, which is really nice to have that much stage deprivation readily available. But the minimum of 0 part kind of sucks, which is where Saiyan Wrist Block, the other one, comes in much better. This one, instead, you only lose 3 stages, but this isn't to a minimum of 0, so you can force an opponent to mill out cards if they're at low power stages, or especially at 0, which is easy to do with some more physically offensive decks, especially if you draw multiple of these in a turn. I find that Saiyan's real strength is in that stage deprivation, and these blocks are a huge part of it. If you're not already running these, I would seriously recommend running them. It's really easy to stick an opponent in a bad situation, especially if you're applying a lot of high pressure attacks. They're always a great choice. Sure, you may be losing out on some other useful effects from blocks or endurance or something like that. But the stage drain ends up being worthwhile in my book, and they're actually a really, really big part of this deck. And lastly, I'm going to cover the energy combat cards in this deck. Saiyan's not really known for using a lot of energy combat cards in the decks because there's so many good physical ones. But there are some excellent energy attacks to include in this deck. Their secondary effects are awesome. The least of these being 3 Saiyan Energy Toss. Energy Toss is standard 2 for 4 energy attack, which is fairly respectable damage. It's not too bad. But the secondary effect is really where it's at, where if your power level is higher than your opponent's, you gain an extra anger, and all the rest of your attacks deal +2 life cards of damage. This can deal out a very considerable amount of damage, especially when combined with some of the other powerful attacks, like Saiyan Lifting Kick or Saiyan Left Kick. Especially when combined with Tree of Might and Trunks' level 4, you can deal out huge amounts of damage directly in a single combat. It's really nice to have. Plus, it gives me an excuse to show off the Broly Legendary Super Saiyan foil subset that I've got. That's always a nice thing to show off. Always makes it a little more fun to draw.
Ooh, look at me, I'm so shiny, I'm fancy promos, ooh, look at me, ooh.
Next is 3 Saiyan Cheap Shot. Sorry about that, it's definitely 3. You can see 3 right here. 3 Saiyan Cheap Shot. This is basically Saiyan's version of Crushing Beam. Endurance 2, 6 life cards of damage, all of it is banished. Sure, you don't get to shuffle in the deck like you do Crushing Beam, but you gain extra anger off of it with the Mastery. Plus, if it hits, you gain the 3 stages that you paid back, which is always great. Banishing cards from an opponent's deck is super nice to have, since it can really get to an opponent's strategy if they're trying to stack their deck with cards like Black Evasion or Dragon Ball 7. It's an excellent card to have, one to definitely revisit if you're not already running it in your Saiyan style deck. And speaking of it, I'm also running 2 Crushing Beam in here, because for all the reasons that I said with Saiyan Cheap Shot, Endurance 2, 6 life cards of damage all banished, it's going to do a very considerable amount of damage, even more if you chuck a Saiyan Energy Toss early on with this. 8 life cards of damage banished is an excellent amount of damage. Can really mess with an opponent if they're relying on finding certain cards in their life deck. Plus, this one shuffles back in afterwards. It's an excellent Heroes Only power card. If you're running a power-based deck, it's one that should be running just about any of them. So that's it for the energy attacks. There's not a whole lot of them, but they're all extremely useful. They've done a very considerable amount of damage. So if you're not already running a lot of energy attacks in your Saiyan deck, it's definitely worth revisiting them and giving it a shot. There are some other excellent ones that aren't in here that I have used. Saiyan Pinpoint Blast is nice if you really need to rely on those critical damage effects for a number of reasons. Saiyan Multi-Blast is great if you want to have the hand advantage. Saiyan Destructive Blast is nice if you're worried about really strong ally presence in your local. There's plenty of other attacks to visit that are worthwhile. These ones just have fit the best for me, and they've been doing a phenomenal job. Alright, and last on the list is Energy Blocks. Keeping in line with the stage deprivation, I run 3 Saiyan Focus in here. If the bottom card of my discard pile is a styled card, it lowers them 4 stages to a minimum of 0. So it's basically the same as Saiyan Lightning Dodge. And it's going to be even more deadly since most energy attacks are going to cost them, 2 to 3 stages. So it's really easy to leave an opponent in an uncomfortable situation by draining out all of their stages. It's really nice to have in combination with a lot of other cards. It fits really well, and it's definitely one to try if you haven't already been using it. And lastly, I have 3 Saiyan Supreme Block in here. It's a block, raise your anger 1, and if your power level is higher than your opponent's, it gets shuffled back into life deck to use. So being able to recur an energy block to use at any point in the game is really nice to have. Plus, it's an extra anger, and most of the time Trunks is going to end up having a higher power level, so it's really, really easy to recur this card. So that is it for this Saiyan Empowered Trunks build. It has definitely been a lot of fun to use, and it's one that when I built, I didn't expect it to go over quite as well as it did. It's certainly not perfect, so this may be maybe a little bit more of a 1.0 kind of build for you guys, so I may revisit it in the future, especially as we introduce more sets and get more interesting cards out there that'd be worth using. But for now, this has been a really fun choice to play. It's done excellently here in the local. It's just been a lot of fun. So if you've been kind of second guessing the idea of running Trunks and Saiyan, I would wholeheartedly recommend it. And hopefully if you're already running it, you've got some ideas here for what to run in your own. If you guys like this video, be sure to click the like button down below. If you guys didn't, click the dislike button down below and let us know in the comment section what you guys didn't like. We're always looking for feedback and information from you guys. We do all of this for you guys. So we want to know what you guys are looking for and what you guys would appreciate. So feel free to leave that in the comments down below. It would help us out a ton. If you guys haven't already, go on ahead and click the subscribe button down below. We would love to have you guys as subscribers, so that you can find more content like this, more matches, more fun videos. We've got some really exciting stuff coming up in the near future, so definitely be sure to look out for that. Also, we do have a new series that we just started called Team Badman Plays, where we step outside the card gaming world a little bit and we play some video games, just decide to chill out and have some fun. The first edition was just released last week. I will go ahead and put a link to that up here, so if you guys could check that out and let us know what you think, it would be extremely, extremely appreciated. So that is it for this edition of Bad Builds. Thank you guys so much for watching. We are so glad to have you guys as viewers and subscribers. We do all of this for you guys. We absolutely couldn't do without you, so thank all of you guys so much for all of your help. And like always, guys, stay bad. Thanks for watching.